Mainstream media, political pundit talk shows. There's Inside the Eye Live, where we break down some of the weekly mainstream media talking points before the talking points even get aired. Add in some entertaining stories, weather, cats, intriguing and informative guests, and you get one of the most listened to Saturday morning streaming media political talk shows going today. And it's all right here on our flagship station, Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. So join me, The Fetch, for Inside the Eye Live every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern. It is truly intelligent media for the politically aware.
Most guys freeze. That's your cerebral cortex looking for an answer it doesn't have.
Even your brain knows you're screwed.
The body's filling with adrenaline right now, whether you know it or not. Your heart's beating fast. It's getting a little harder to breathe. The neurobiological system is telling it to run, but your knees are too weak to move.
Fear is not real. The only place that fear can exist is in our thoughts of the future. It is a product of our imagination, causing us to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That is near insanity. Do not misunderstand me. Danger is very real, but fear is a choice. We are all telling ourselves a story.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. 100% listener-supported radio. Reporting unafraid, right here, where information never sleeps. Revolution Radio.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Yes, indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to another edition of The Story Behind the Story. I'm your host, Dr. A. True Ott. Yes, indeed, the doctor is in the house. Thanks again. A big shout out to Alex for filling in for me last week. I was busy traveling. I was away from technology. I needed to do that, take care of business, wrap up ends over the Labor Day weekend. But I got to tell you, as I was watching the saga, the story unfold in Houston, Texas, I just had to shake my head because I smell something extremely fishy in the woodpile, folks. Because I got to tell you, our producer Dominique, who's with us every week, like regular, like clockwork. Our producer, Mr. Rowe. I mean, golly, these guys are tremendously awake and knowing what's going on. Because I had the opportunity to meet personally Dominique in San Jose back in 2013, and my co-host Alex Studer as well. We had some time to meet together because I was there, you see, to prepare and to present a 2-hour presentation entitled "Whether or Not." I presented that then. I promised to keep an eye on what was going on, and now it is. It seemed like all bets are off. All holds are no longer barred. Okay, I mean it's like a free for all because I'm going to show you and tell you tonight some things, ladies and gentlemen. That's I promise you will get your eyes to raise up a little bit. Will get you to think at least. Okay, and I got to just again shout out once again those joining us on 8:10. We have the Goldwater Jim with us again as always. Thank you so much, Jim and Major Burdock, for the simulcast, thinking enough of this broadcast to shout it out to 10,000 potential listeners. Hopefully, we have that many or more listening. I say that hopefully because I submit to you tonight, ladies and gentlemen listening, this could probably be, I would say it most undoubtedly is one of the most important broadcasts I have ever done because of the topic matter and the urgency of what I perceive is going on worldwide. Things that are happening. We can attest. Major Burdock can attest to the frequency of storm systems hitting the Philippines. They're not called hurricanes down in that neck of the woods in the Pacific. They're called what, cyclones? Is it an abnormal year down there, Major?
We had a couple hit fairly recently, and by the way, the Goldwater is tipping our hats right now. Thanks for mentioning us. We're just proud to be part of your show. The weather here is one of the few things we can report on, and we tend to report only on extreme weather, and if that. But yeah, it's been a little crazy. I haven't lived here long enough to know if it's normal though. So I'd probably defer that question over to Jim Cherney. I'll see if I can't get him on our comm system here and ask him if it's if we've had a normal year. But we definitely had a couple of really serious storms. I did a live broadcast over in Subic, and it was pretty gnarly. And of course, we just had one go through last week, so I can attest to that.
Now, fill me in because you're there on the ground. It's 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturday there in the Philippines. Tell me what the status is. I've heard this, but I haven't verified it. When did the Filipino government request the U.S. military to basically vacate the area? Does that happen pretty much, or is there still a military presence of the U.S. on the Philippine Islands?
There's a presence. There's still a presence in Subic. There's a general military presence in certain areas. We still have installations. The main airports and the main bases have been shut down, but there's still military personnel around. So to what degree they're working in what capacity, whatever it is very low key. Beyond that, it's just being on the ground here again. Our policy is not to report, so we're kind of in a conundrum here. I'd love to answer your question in a little more detail on that, but
okay.
I can't do it from here.
I understand. We don't want to be given a visit by Army or Air Force intelligence. I got to tell you, and Dominique, after after my presentation on 2013 on whether or not, I got to tell you a nice little visit I had with some Air Force intelligence officers. Wow, this maybe I'm stupid for even talking about this, but I don't care anymore. I am to that point of I'm an American citizen first and foremost. And I think what's going on in the military right now and these levels of experimentation is best described as criminal. Our separation of powers in this republic, supposed constitutional republic of America, states that the military is directed by a civilian commander-in-chief that's elected by we the people. That's the way it's supposed to flow according to our founding fathers. And so the military, you see, is not supposed to have power over the commander-in-chief and thus we the people. The military should be responsible to not only protect, first of all, we the people, but also we should have oversight to understand what's going on within certain levels. We shouldn't put military personnel at risk. Of course, I understand that. But at what point do we say no more are we going to be experimented on as guinea pigs? And I submit to you that's exactly what's gone on in Hurricane Harvey. And I guarantee you from my research and what's going on now with the oncoming hurricane, so-called Irma. It's supposed to make landfall later tonight, first thing in the morning, and the projections are absolutely stunning of the incredible destruction. It's recorded to be, quote, the most powerful most powerful hurricane ever recorded in Atlantic hurricane history. Now that's saying something, folks. It's just amazing to see what the potential is. Now, I have to preface all of this because what I alluded to in my presentation in San Jose, in my PowerPoint presentation, was a couple of formerly top secret for certain eyes only documents that Air Force intelligence somehow took exception to my talking about. Because I received a visit from two very well-built, well-dressed young men who gave me their cards and their identification as being Air Force intelligence. See, Navy has their own Navy intelligence. We have Army intelligence. We have Air Force intelligence. And they're tasked with basically keeping security in place. And that's understandable. But they basically politely, they didn't shake me down, and it was very polite. They were cordial. I was cordial back. They just asked me if I would willingly give them my sources, because they were concerned that there was an insider, high brass, who channeled this information to me, and they wanted to plug any leaks. I can appreciate that. I said, well, you have to know that I got this, and I showed them exactly where it was on the internet. I said, this is the report. Weather is a Force Multiplier is the title of it, Owning the Weather in 2025. They were shocked. And shortly after that link was stopped. They didn't want this out. But the good news is, I tried to, again, link it up in my blog post, which I called Weather as a Force Multiplier. I tried to find the link. I couldn't come up with the same link that I had before, but the good news is I have multiple copies. Hard copies that I printed out. Now I'm gonna paint this picture for you folks and do it the best I can without having a video camera to show and tell. The report is quite voluminous, actually. It's 44 pages, not counting the preface, the introduction, and the bibliography. The title is called Weather as a Force Multiplier, semicolon, Owning the Weather in 2025. Now, are they 8 years ahead of schedule? I submit to you they are far ahead of the 2025 target date. Now let me explain to you why this is. We're going to and explain this in detail because I'm going to draw the parallels with patents that have been applied for and issued. Because see, why have the technology if somebody can't profit from it? Okay, and I followed the trail as to where the patents were granted, both U.S. patents as well as international patents, and what they were designed to do, and the technology needed to implement weather as a, quote, force multiplier. This research paper was presented to Air Force written by Colonel Tamsey House, Lieutenant Colonel James B. Neer, Jr., LTC William B. Shields, USA. I'm not sure what LTC is of USA. And 4 majors: Major Ronald Salento, Major David Husband, Major Ann E. Mercer, and Major James E. Pugh. Dated August 1996. So we're talking 21 years ago when this was first authored. Now, folks, I've been able to, and I showed this somewhat in my presentation, to show the systematic realization of goals as far as the technological advances have been concerned. And then I follow the path like a breadcrumb trail, if you will, to kind of piece the pieces together and get a pretty clear picture of what's really going on in weather modification. Okay? Now, I'm going to say out front as a premise to this. When I talk with the average person on the street about this, I tell you, they look at me like, oh, really? Yeah, that's right up there with, the most tinfoil hat subject you can talk about. Their eyes glaze over. It's even worse in some instances when you talk about flat Earth, because when you say flat Earth, they look at you like, whoa, you're really a nutcase. But then when you say, well, what about the weather? What about global climate change being a product of a top secret program? They look and say, oh, wow, you've been watching too much James Bond, or you've been watching too much Goldfinger, this type of thing. But folks, they don't want to look at the facts, because this is inescapable. I report to them and said, have you ever heard of something called the United Nations Weather Weapons Treaty, which was finished up in May of 1977, the same spring that I was graduating from high school, folks, right? Shows you my age. 1977 UN Weather Weapons Treaty was finalized and ratified worldwide, pretty much worldwide, I should say, completed by 1978. Let me just read to you. I have right here a hard copy of the UN Weather Weapons Treaty of 1977. I ask, and I would say anybody that's skeptical about this, why would the United Nations in 1977 have this treaty signed in Switzerland, in Geneva, and ratified by every primary Western nation except for our great ally in the Middle East, Israel? Israel refused to sign off on this for some reason, okay? I'll leave that to you. They're glaringly absent from the list of nations that have signed off and ratified this treaty. Every single one of our NATO allies has signed off on it, from the UK to France to Germany. All of these NATO allies are first and foremost signing up the same date and time pretty much that the U.S. But our major ally in the Middle East, Israel, has not. Now, we're going to go on to explain that as well. Now, here we have the preamble, okay? And it says, quote, guided by the interest of consolidating peace and wishing to contribute to the cause of halting the arms race and of bringing about general and complete disarmament under strict and effective international control, and of saving mankind from the danger of using new means of warfare, determined to continue negotiations with a view to achieving effective progress towards further measures in the field of disarmament, recognizing that scientific and technical advances may open new possibilities with respect to modification of the environment, this is 1977, folks. Recognizing that scientific and technical advances may open new possibilities with modification of the environment. You see, Eastland was busy doing Bernard Eastland and others were busy in the 60s proving the technology is viable. And they're working with the military-industrial complex of America and the Soviet Union, by the way, to get a handle. It was a new arms race, a complete arms race that was extremely viable, folks. And I go on to say, quote, reading from it, recalling the declaration of the United Nations Conference on the Human Environment adopted at Stockholm on 16th of June, 1972, and realizing that the use of environmental modification techniques for peaceful purposes could improve the interrelationship of man and nature and contribute to the preservation and improvement of the environment for the benefit of present and future generations, comma, recognizing, however, that military or any other hostile use of such techniques could have effects extremely harmful to human welfare. On and on and on it goes. Having agreed as follows, Article 1, Article 2, it's pretty straightforward after that, just saying the signees to this treaty refuse to allow the technology to propagate. That's basically what it says. And the United States signed off, ratified it, and it became treaty and enforceable under treaty law. Now, consider that in light of this report from the United States Air Force. Again, weather as a force multiplier owning the weather in 2025. As I got to share this with your listeners in verbatim because it's absolutely incredible. It really truly is. In light of treaties that have already been ratified and are become law. So really what's happening here, even the writing of this paper can be construed as a significant violation of the terms of the treaty. And that's my opinion. I'm not an attorney, but it seems to me it does. The table of contents. Okay. Introduction. Chapter Part 2. Required capability rights. Why would we want to mess with the weather? Oh, wow. Mess with the weather. And what do we mean by the term weather modification? This is on page 4. It goes into then system description. They call it what they call the global weather network. It's not just the North American weather network, folks. It's the global weather network. That's identified on page 8 of the report. And then, of course, applying weather modification to military operations begins on page 10. So here we are. The meat of this is chapter 4, concept of operations defined. They show how they can affect precipitation, fog, storms, and really amazingly, exploitation of what's called near space for space control. Near space is that ionospheric level, that's a safe area where most the space shuttle is operated into, and amazingly, the military has sought to control that as part of national security, right? And then, starting on page 20, opportunities afforded by space weather modifications. Space weather modification. Because see, this concept has to begin in the ionosphere. It's got to in what's called near space. Okay, these things have got to be deployed in near space. Communications dominance via ionospheric modification. So they have to modify the existing climate basically in the ionosphere itself. And then this is really quite amazing on page 27, what they term artificial weather. In other words, there's no such thing as natural anymore. It's all artificial and controlled. And then they sum it up in page 28, concept of operations summary. So the recommendations made to these top brass in 1996, investigative recommendations, page 31. How do we get there? And in other words, having complete control of the weather by the year 2025. How do we get there from here in 1996. What's the steps we have to take? And then the following is the conclusion. The appendix says, why is the ionosphere important? And then B, research to conduct to better understand and predict ionospheric effects. And of course, there has to be acronyms and definitions on page 41. The bibliography begins on page 42. And that's the table of contents, folks, for this report that the Air Force intelligence boys really didn't like me having, let alone talking about publicly. Okay? Now, there's illustrations that are quite eye-opening to me personally. There's a configuration of what they call the Global Weather Network. The military figure number 3-2, the military system for weather modification operations. Number 4-1, chapter 4, cross beam approach for generating what they call an artificial ionospheric mirror. Oh my goodness, yes. And then figure number 5, a core competency roadmap to weather modification by the year 2025. 2025 is their target goal. I submit they've completed it 8 years at a time. They're just now trying to test it and confirm its workability. The color picture on the front of this research paper shows the Earth as NASA's globe, right? With the big numbers 2025. It looks almost like 2001: A Space Odyssey. But what's amazing is there is a figure, a constellation that looks like it's got the Air Force wings stylized over what looks like the Atlas rocket that's fired the Air Force's top secret SBX-B. Okay, that I want to talk about that as well. If you go to my blog that's posted, folks, on the chat room there at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Go to the chat room. You can click onto the blog, and you can scroll on down and see some of the most salient quotes directed right out of this Weather is a Force Multiplier. I wish I could give you a link to download the report itself. It's not I can no longer find it. Maybe out there somewhere. But what I think is really amazing in my discussions and my interview with Edward Hendry, figure 3-1, Global Weather Network, is in cooperation, it says in the footnotes, cooperation with Microsoft Computer Corporation. And what's amazing is, guess what? It's an azimuthal flat Earth equidistance map. It shows the Earth laid out exactly like the United Nations map. And it shows the communications of the orbiting technology they need to put in place. And they have this, it's all outlined step by step, starting in the year 2000, 2005, 2015. All these things had to be in place. And hello, that's exactly what it calls for to have a space vehicle. I mean, this is amazing. An unautomated UAV. It's called a UAV vehicle. Unautomated vehicle. Is that exactly what they just launched again on the 7th? Yesterday? Yes, folks. I just may digress a little bit here, because in my Salt Lake Tribune newspaper, front page news, Harvey aftermath. Utah nonprofit, the Best Friends Animal Sanctuary, is getting tons of donation money. I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars pouring in to go down there and to basically save these lost pets and unite them with their owners and they're ravaged by the floodwaters. It's a nice thing, but front page news, right? Wow. Inside the second the second page, A2, Nation of the World, in my aging fingers here, we see a picture of the Hawk missile and the payload there in Cape Canaveral, Florida's Kennedy Space Center. Kennedy Space Center. Air Force's, the headlines, Air Force's super secret space shuttle takes off. It's called SpaceX. SpaceX launched the Air Force's super secret space shuttle. Not just secret now, it's super secret space shuttle on Thursday. A technology tester capable of spending years in orbit. The unmanned Falcon rocket blasted off from Florida's Kennedy Space Center as schools and businesses boarded up for Hurricane Irma. Isn't that just amazing? It's the fifth flight for one of these crewless mini shuttles, known as the X-37B orbital test vehicle. The two Air Force space planes have already logged a combined 5.5 years in orbit. But officials won't say what the spacecraft are doing up there. The last mission lasted almost 2 years and ended with a May touchdown at the same runway formerly used by NASA's space shuttles. The first SBX-37B was launched in 2010. So they've been at it, see, for quite a while, folks. Yeah, and nobody says what it's for because, of course, they can't tell you. If you talk about it at conspiracy conferences, you may get visited, and probably will, by Air Force intelligence officers who are just doing their job. Good folks, good people, indeed. So it's just funny that there's this on page A2, and then we have on A3 the subheadlines, Islands ravaged by Irma and Hurricane Jose is not far behind. Some areas, quote, literally a rubble. Nearly 1 million people left without electricity. Oh, on and on, folks. It's just amazing. And then below that, traffic turns into a major nightmare as 500,000 people leave Florida and are stranded on traffic jams. And there's pictures of them here in the Turnpike near Sunrise Boulevard. Oh my goodness. Miami, Florida, the race to flee Hurricane Irma became a marathon nightmare for many as more than 500,000 people were ordered to leave South Florida on Thursday. So they're ordering people to leave the area Thursday while the Air Force is firing up their space shuttle. Isn't that interesting? Oh my goodness. With the storm barreling toward the tip of Florida for perhaps a catastrophic blow this weekend, normally quick trips turn into day-long marathon journeys on crowded highways amid a constant search for gasoline and lodging. Airline seats out of Florida were in short supply as well. Marie and Neil Michaud loaded their 2 children and a dog into their small sport utility vehicle and left their home near Cocoa Beach about 10 a.m. Thursday, bound for an impromptu vacation to Washington, D.C. Using a phone app and calls ahead to search for fuel along the way, they finally arrived at a convenience store that had gasoline. Nearly 5 hours later, it took them 5 hours to go 60 miles up Interstate 95. Wow. Quote, there simply was no gas and it's complete gridlock. People are stranded on the sides of the highway, she said. It's 92 degrees out and little kids are out on the grass on the side of the road and no one is there to help them. There you go, folks. Those people who are stupid enough to stay, according to the same article, the National Guard has been deployed. It's basically martial law. And those people that refuse to go and leave, they say they can write it out. Guess what? They're being ordered to take a smoothie Sharpie pen and write their Social Security numbers on their wrist or forehead so that you can see their corpses can be easily identified. This has not really happened. The same thing happened with emergency first responders in Houston. They actually had the people along the path of Harvey. They had the same thing. They demanded them to write their Social Security numbers in permanent ink, smart tips, Unbelievable. Sharpie pins. Folks, wouldn't it be so much easier, they will say, if you just have a microchip to identify you? Put it in your wrist or in your forehead, and that'd make it so much easier. These crude, simple little Sharpie pins. Oh my goodness. So there we have it, folks. The national news media is setting the stage, and I can just imagine what's happening right now in Cocoa Beach area, the Miami area. It is going to be devastating because you see the latest reports as I've watched it before the show. It doesn't appear like it's slowing down at all. In fact, it seems to be intensifying. They think it's possible they could hit 200-mile-per-hour winds. Holy mackerel. Never before seen. Now, so what does this have to do with anything? You say, well, this is all kind of. I've actually had people say, well, God's really angry at this nation because of what's going on. And I've had other people that are more liberal in their slants are laughing because you see the Donald Trump official White House, the secondary White House, is down in South Florida, and lo and behold, it's right directly in the path of Irma. So this is God's vengeance on this evil Donald Trump. Okay. Well, I guess you can believe whatever you want to believe, but my goodness. It's got to be global warming, right? It's got to be climate change that's making all of this happen. In fact, the Salt Lake Tribune in this editorial cartoon, this Mr. Bagley's, he's a good cartoonist. A lot of times it's pretty funny what he has, but here in today's opinion page is where he has the Bagley cartoon. It has Nitwitness News, not eyewitness. It's Nitwitness News. CDN, Climate Denial Network. Here's this idiot standing against the hurricane force winds, and he says, from where I'm standing, just not seeing those wildfires experts predicted from global warming. Well, folks, see, that's what they want you to believe, that this is all because of global warming, because we've just flat out burned too much fossil fuel. We burned too much coal. We've just are destroying the upper atmosphere because of all of our greenhouse gases. That's the official scapegoat. Oh my goodness. Let me read to you from Weather as a Force Multiplier, and you make your own decisions. As all good reports have, this thing starts out with an executive summary. Here is what the executive summary reads, and I quote, in 2025, U.S. aerospace forces can, quote, own the weather by capitalizing on emerging technologies and focusing development of those technologies to war-fighting applications. Such a capability offers the warfighter tools to shape the battle space in ways never before possible. It provides opportunities to impact operations across the full spectrum of conflict and is pertinent to all possible futures. The purpose of this paper is to outline a strategy for the use of a future weather modification system to better achieve military objectives rather than to provide a detailed technical roadmap. Quote, a high-risk, high-reward endeavor, weather modification offers a dilemma, not unlike the splitting of the atom. While some segments of society will always be reluctant to examine controversial issues such as weather modification, the tremendous military capabilities that could result from this field are ignored at our own peril. From enhancing friendly operations or disrupting those of the enemy via small-scale tailoring of natural weather patterns to complete dominance of global communications and counter-space control, weather modification offers the warfighter a wide range of possible options to defeat or coerce an enemy. Oh, my goodness. Some of the potential capabilities a weather modification system could provide to a warfighting commander-in-chief, the acronym CINC, C-I-N-C, are listed in table number 1. I'll go on now to table 1. Operational capabilities matrix. There's the left side, to degrade enemy forces, the right-hand side, enhance friendly forces. To degrade enemy forces, there's precipitation enhancement. On the right side, friendly forces, precipitation avoidance. To degrade the enemy forces, they can flood the lines of communication, reduce their effectiveness for communication, and decrease their comfort level and destroy the enemy morale. Pretty much just the opposite on the right-hand side. Maintain and improve lines of communication, maintain visibility, maintain comfort level, and improve the morale of our friendly forces. Left side, degrade enemy forces, storm enhancement. Well, deny them to do military operations because they can't fight in crappy hurricane force gale weather or tornadoes or typhoons, right? Good news, the right side, storm modification to choose our own battle space environment. See. Now, then there's also precipitation denial. They can cause dry weather to happen to degrade enemy forces too, if they need to deny fresh water, and it can actually induce droughts. This is, oh my goodness. Onto the degrade enemy forces. Space weather now. Disrupt communications and radar in the ionosphere, upper atmosphere. Disable, destroy space assets. Fog and cloud removal for the enemy to deny their concealment. To increase vulnerability to their forces to bombing raids, okay? And so on. It's just the opposite. Fog and cloud removal to maintain airfield operations. So this is why they call it a force multiplier. So continuing on, concluding with their executive summary, quote, current technologies will mature over the next 30 years, which will offer anyone who has the necessary resources the ability to modify weather patterns and their corresponding effects, at the very least on the local scale. Oh boy. In the United States, weather modification will likely become a part of national security policy with both domestic and international applications. Our government will pursue such a policy at various levels. These levels could include unilateral actions, participation in a security framework such as NATO, membership in an international organization such as the UN, or participation in a coalition. Oh my goodness. Besides the significant benefits and operational capability will provide, another motivation to pursue weather modification is to deter and counter potential adversaries. In this paper, we show that appropriate application of weather modification can provide battlespace dominance to a degree never before imagined. In the future, such operations will enhance air and space superiority and provide new options for battlespace shaping and battlespace awareness. Quote, the technology is there, waiting for us to pull it all together. This is directly quoted from General Gordon R. Sullivan and his writing, Moving into the 21st Century, America's Army and Modernization Military Review, July 1993. And again, this is called Weather, a Force Multiplier. The article in Military Review, November, December of 1995, page 75. So, You don't think this is real, folks? You think so? I'm just making this up? I wish it were not true. This is criminal again, as far as I'm concerned. Chapter 1, Page 1, Scenario. Imagine that in 2025, the U.S. is fighting a rich but now consolidated, politically powerful drug cartel in South America. Oh my goodness. The cartel has purchased hundreds of Russian and Chinese-built fighter planes that have successfully, fighters that have successfully thwarted our attempts to attack their production facilities. Oh, come on. So the drug cartel has its own fighter jets? What are they? I mean, this is crazy. With their local numerical superiority and interior supply lines, the cartel is launching more than 10 aircraft for every one of ours. It's laughable. In addition, the cartel is using the French system Probatoire d'Observation de la Terre, the SBOT, positioning and tracking imagery systems, which in 2025 are capable of transmitting near real-time multispectral imagery with 1 meter resolution. The U.S. Air Force wishes to engage the enemy on an uneven playing field in order to exploit the full potential of our aircraft and munitions. Meteorological analysis reveals that equatorial South America typically has afternoon thunderstorms on a daily basis throughout the year. Our intelligence has confirmed that cartel pilots are reluctant to fly in or near thunderstorms. Therefore, our Weather Force Support Element, acronym WFSE, which is a part of the Commander-in-Chief's Air Operations Center, AOC, is tasked to forecast storm paths and trigger or intensify thunderstorm cells over critical target areas that the enemy must defend with their aircraft. Since our aircraft in 2025 have all-weather capability, the thunderstorm threat is minimal to our forces, and we can effectively and decisively control the sky over the target. Our Weather Force Support Element, WFSC, has the necessary sensor and communication capabilities to observe, detect, and act on weather modification requirements to support all U.S. military objectives. On it goes. Here's the key part I want to bring out in Chapter 1. By 2025, uninhabited aerospace vehicles, UAV, have been routinely used for weather modification operations. Uninhabited aerospace vehicles, acronym UAV. By cross-referencing desired attack times with wind and thunderstorm forecasts and the SBOT satellite's projected orbit, the WFSE generates mission profiles for each uninhabited aerospace vehicle. The WFSE then guides each UAV using near real-time information from a highly sensitive networked sensor array of supercomputers, folks. Prior to the attack, which is coordinated with forecasted weather conditions, the uninhabited aerospace vehicles begin cloud generation and seeding operations. You get that, folks? The uninhabited aerospace vehicles, aka the SBX, the top secret space shuttle of the Air Force, begin cloud generation and seeding operations. The UAVs, uninhabited aerospace vehicles, disperse a cirrus cloud shield, to deny enemy visual and infrared IR surveillance. Simultaneously, microwave heaters that have already been placed by the UAVs, these are upper atmosphere, and these are ionospheric, folks. The microwave heaters create localized scintillation to disrupt active sensing via synthetic aperture radar (SAR) systems such as the commercially available Canadian Research and Rescue satellite-aided tracking that will be widely available by 2025. Other UAV cloud seeding operations cause a developing thunderstorm to intensify over the target, severely limiting the enemy's capability to defend itself. The Weather Modification SC, WFSC, Weather Force Support Element, monitors the entire operation in real time and quantifies the successful completion of another very important but routine weather modification mission. At first look, this scenario may seem far-fetched, the report reads, but by the year 2025, it is well within the realm of possibility. The next chapter explores the reasons for weather modification, defines the scope, and examines trends that will make it possible during the next 30 years. Now, before I go into chapter 2 here, folks, I got to digress, and we're rapidly approaching the end of the first hour. But before we go into break, I need to explain to you some of the research papers and patents issued to Dr. Bernard J. Eastland, formerly of NASA, and Lyle M. Jenkins. This paper specifically is called Atmospheric Heating as, quote, a research tool. Oh, my goodness. The official Air Force explanation for the SBX, their secret space shuttle, is to do research. But we can't tell you what the research is. Well, I'm telling you what it is, folks. It's outlined here by Dr. Bernard J. Eastland in his paper. And if you show his patents that were issued, both on a U.S. patents and international patents, it explains it completely. Atmospheric heating as a research tool. Yeah. The techniques include A, heating of rain droplets with microwaves between 26 and 35 gigahertz. B, heating of atmospheric oxygen with microwave frequencies of about 54 gigahertz. And C, creation of artificial ionization plasma patterns in the atmosphere which will be heated by microwaves. The plasma zones may interact with electrical phenomena by adjustments in atmospheric electrical conductivity. New experimental techniques similar to the ink drop experiments to determine the diffusion of chemicals in this liquid can be applied into the atmosphere to study heat transport and electrical properties. And the whole reason for this, folks, you're going to the body of this report, is to be able to steer hurricanes and tornadoes to make them basically a weapon. Now, there's pictures here that blow me away. So with violent storms such as tornadoes or hurricanes, solutions have only focused on early warning and on development of fortified buildings to withstand the strong forces that are the hallmark of these atmospheric events. Very sophisticated prediction methods have been developed to warn populations of potential storm danger. These, quote, warn and seek shelter mechanisms have clearly reduced the loss of life and, to a lesser extent, property damage associated with these natural events. However, despite our best efforts, loss of life and costly property damage are still strongly associated with severe weather phenomena. So he's laying this out to say we need to be able to computerize the upper atmosphere and through microgenerations to be able to dissipate and stop these tornadoes from even forming or touching down in the first place. And he lays out how it can happen. It's not just tornadoes, but also the same thing holds true with Atlantic Ocean formation of hurricanes. Now, his part 3 of his paper is called Weather Research Concept: the artificial ionized plasma patterns in the atmosphere as an experimental tool. And here he has the formation of these low pressure ridges that start out as very kind of benign tropical storms and are then, through the manipulation of certain areas within the eye of the developing storm, to create intensity or to make them become neutral or very much just a tropical depression. This is all in this patent tied in, folks. It's just I'm sitting here looking at the pictures. There's a what's called the thunderstorm slash hurricane generation solar power satellite. And this figure 5 is called the TSPS. That's this satellite beaming this microwave energy field beam down into the central part of the tornado and or the hurricane. And here's what it says. Figure 5 is an overview graphic from the New Scientist magazine, portrays the elements of our technology interacting with a thunderstorm or tornado. Eastland has described the effect of adding heat to the cold rain downdraft in the Center for Analysis and Prediction of Storms, the computer simulator of a supercell thunderstorm. Okay? This was what they call tornado genesis or hurricane genesis. And so they showed that how it worked and how you can actually guide it. Then it goes back and explains how the International Space Station, ISS, would be able to demonstrate and test out their concept. Okay? They were going to beam the microwave out of the International Space Station. Now, there's all kinds of things that said, well, NASA doesn't really have an ISS. It's not really real. Folks, in the low atmosphere, it is real. Okay? And this is the incredible paper, the graphics that are shown here in it's what's called near space, not outer space, but near space graphics of this Air Force paper. It's showing the orbits that are going around. It's kind of following what the sun and the moon do in the flat Earth maps. It's going around in a circular pattern based on the polarity, the pull of the North Pole, the polar star. You have, again, all this is showing. This is all in the Air Force top secret document. They know the Earth is not a globe. It shows it in their maps. I until I talked with Edward Hendry and read his book, I never saw what this really means in this Air Force report. Unbelievable, folks. The patents are there. They're issued. And just to get you thinking, as we go into the break, these patents have been assigned to something called Weather Central for coalition control. Weather Central is completely owned and operated by a man named Evelyn Rothschild, ladies and gentlemen. Rothschild, yeah, the same patron saint that brought us the state of Israel. You go to Israel and you see their currency. Instead of Benjamin Franklin on their bills or George Washington, it's Aaron Rothschild is their patron saint.
Listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Enjoy your extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another extra big-ass fries?
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please come back when you can afford to make a purchase.
No.
I'm sorry you're having
Come
trouble.
on. My kids are starving.
Thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we believe in freedom of ideas, freedom of speech, but above all, we believe in freedom of existence through self-reliance. This station is 100% listener-supported, and as a fundraising promotion, I have a kick-ass free gift for a $100 donation. 35,000 seeds. 25 years in the freezer. Long-term storable, 54 different varieties. So if food prices go crazy, the shit hits the fan, or if you just want to save tons of money every year by creating your own food like I do, grab our seed pack special. Just look for the banner on the homepage at freedomslips.com. Don't be a statistic. Don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. We need, as humans, to start taking care of ourselves and not depending on the megacorps to provide unhealthy, nasty food. Included in this package is also a DVD with 900 survival and off-grid living documents and the offline home canning how to do everything website, all on the DVD. So when you're growing all that food, you know how to can it, store it, preserve it, etc. with all these documents. So thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I hope that you will pick up this package and start learning to be free. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps and freedom is one seed that needs to be planted.
What we do in life, it goes in eternity.
Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the second hour. That story behind the story. I'm your host once again, Dr. A. True Watt. The doctor is in the house. Again, I just give a big shout out to those joining us with the Goldwater Network, 8chan. Again, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Murdoch, for what you're doing with us. And Dr. Excuse Alex tonight. Alex wanted to be with us, and he did a great job again as always last week. He has a big gig he's doing now. He's a musician, and he's got quite a concert thing that's going on. He's excited about it. Congratulations to him. Again, we also want to just tip you off, folks. If you're listening through Revolution Radio again, and you have tuned into the show, we don't have any commercials here for a reason. We are not. There's no money generated from commercial sales and that through Revolution Radio. It's all done. The operation is done completely through donations from you. And we just received notice from Willow that they're changing out the technology to make it better. There's going to be maybe a few glitches as we go forward, but it's supposed to be a lot better in a couple of weeks. They're changing out Studio B in a couple of weeks, and I'm not sure what the technical things are. I don't need to know, but they are putting money back in, obviously, to make the experience more user-friendly and more reliable. And I tip my hats off to them. Again, folks, support the station as the best you can through whatever donation you can give. It's well appreciated. And we're happy to bring you the show. Your donations do not go to me or anybody that works with me. Surely not to Alex, surely not to Dominic, surely not to Mr. Rowe. Heavens knows they probably deserve a little bit of money. I tell you, they do a great job bringing this show to you and putting up with my little bit of nastiness. I want to go in and continue on this train of thought, but before I do, I want to just bring in Major Burdock. He's listening quietly here. What do you have? Do you have anything you want to add or offer up at this point, Major?
I mean, I'm just, I knew that the weather was controlled in certain senses. If you live near a ski resort, of course. I mean, they fly large planes over areas at certain times, and they send out this spray of iodine crystals, and it snows. So that's no big deal for me. I mean, of course. But what you're talking about, wow, you know, it's coming closer. It's coming closer in my head to making contact here, because what you were talking about the people's eyes glazing over, when you start to mention this, I can honestly tell you I'm one of those people, but my eyes aren't glazing as much right now after the first hour. True.
Well, let's continue. Let's keep these scales falling off your eyes, shall we? And those again, I challenge the people. I said, if you give me a couple of hours, I'd be happy to debate it with anybody. I mean, bring the Air Force intelligence officers in, okay? Let's debate this. Let me show you in graphic PowerPoint presentations the existing technologies, the sea-based arrays, these massive ocean-going vehicles that have these huge incredible arrays that make HARP look like child's play. HARP is an experiment that happened to send microwaves up in the upper atmosphere. That's well documented. Many books have been written about that. But HARP is antiquated. It's gone. We have these sea-based X-arrays that are going in conjunction with what I believe is the space shuttle up, these secret missions. They're not going to talk to about it because of what's in the content of this incredible report in 1996. Let's continue. Let's forge on, because I promise you, it gets interesting. And we're going to tie this into the approaching Irma storm. Dominique asked the question. We'll talk about this. I have my own ideas of why the path is being generated as it is to South Florida. If you look on the map, it's heading. I mean, it can't go any more square to Donald Trump's South Florida, what's called his Southern White House. He spends more time there than Camp David. It's his place where his getaway is, and I think there's reasons for that. If we have time, we'll delve into that, folks. I believe there's a reason why he's shaking up all of his cabinet and it's becoming more militarized. And I mean, he may not be aware of this because there's been some other things happening this summer, but believe me, it's becoming almost the same type of thing that Hitler did when he took power. It's makes me gulp, folks. All right, so. Oh, and before I forget, I gotta tell you what's kind of funny is this paper by Eastland, and I did some background history on his co-author of this, the eminent Lyle M. Jenkins. Jenkins, his company's called Jenkins Enterprises, Address 151 Ravenhead in where? Houston, Texas. And there's even his phone number there. And his email address. Jenkins is, I pull all this up. I got to give you the biography of Dr. Bernard J. Eastland. He has a BS in physics. I believe he's deceased by now. Yeah, he did. He died on December 12th of 2007. Dr. Bernie J. Eastland, BS in physics from MIT, a PhD in physics from Columbia University. He started two venture capitalist-backed corporations based on applications in the upper atmosphere of microwave power. He was the principal inventor of a microwave lamp used for UV curing of coatings. Over 35,000 of his lamps are in industrial use worldwide. Also, he applied microwave power to heating of heavy oil and removal of paraffin from oil wells. Now, he did this in oil wells in the Texas region, okay? Through his involvement with the fusion program of the Department of Energy, he is familiar with all aspects of high power, high frequency microwaves. He has published 48 papers and has 15 international patents. Dr. Eastland passed away December 12th, 2007. Now here's Lyle Jenkins. Lyle Jenkins is currently a consultant on development of the tornado/hurricane taming project. This is his bio, folks. I'm not making this up. This is curriculum vitae. He retired from where? He retired from NASA after 38 years of systems engineering activity. Major projects included Apollo and Space Shuttle. Yeah, Mr. Jenkins, he's part of the Apollo system that brought us the walking on the moon. Yeah. Space construction studies on the solar power satellite concept led to concentration on space telerobotics technology. A vision of the potential for space systems to interact with the global environmental weather motivated an interest in geoengineering. Prior to NASA, he was a design engineer on the Atlas ICBM and the Centaur, the first liquid hydrogen upper stage rocket. He served as a gunnery officer on a destroyer. Education was at the University of Kansas and the University of California, Berkeley. Yeah, you think he's a little bit liberal there? With a BS and MS in civil engineering. He has published 32 papers and has 1 patent. Recreational activities include tennis, fishing, and skiing. Okay, Mr. Jenkins, if you're listening to this or get a copy of this, I don't have anything against you, sir. Let's go fishing. I'll take you fishing on my fishing boat. You're always welcome to come, but just make sure that the weather's really good. A little fine, I just call for a little bit of light wind, a little bit of chop, perfect for a little bit of overcast maybe, but no major things, okay? Can you do that for me there, Mr. Jenkins? I think you can. All right, so I gotta show you that he lives, or at least at this one CV showed he lives in Houston. What would be his motivation for causing this incredible event to basically inundate this record rainfall? I mean, the trillions of gallons are just unfathomable. Here in Utah, to get the residents of Utah some idea of how much rain fell, the local newspaper, the Mormon church-owned Deseret News, ran a front-page article showing that if that amount of water, in the whole entire storm system approaching 40 plus trillion gallons, if that were to fall into Utah, it's the equivalent of 3 complete Great Salt Lakes. Great Salt Lake is quite huge, man. It's voluminous body of water, really, in the inland ocean, and that the entire cubic foot space of the entire state of Utah would be 17 inches or roughly knee deep underwater. And that is not natural, folks. Okay, it just flat out isn't. Oh my goodness. What is Mr. Jenkins thinking about? Maybe he left Houston and got ticked off at somebody in the neighborhood. I don't know. I don't know if he still lives there or not. This was 2009 that I pulled this from. So anyway, the going on. Let's delve into chapter 2. Weather is a force multiplier. Owning the weather in 2025. Why would we want to mess with the weather? It says, and I quote. According to General Gordon Sullivan, former Army Chief of Staff, quote, as we leap technology into the 21st century, we will be able to see the enemy day or night in any weather and go after him relentlessly. And the quote is a footnote there. So the justification is this, quote, a global, precise, real-time, robust, systematic weather modification capability would provide war-fighting commanders-in-chiefs with a powerful force multiplier to achieve his military objectives. Since weather is a common denominator to all possible futures, a precise weather modification capability will be universally applicable and have utility across the entire spectrum of conflict. No wonder their space shuttle is so super secret, right? The capability of influence the weather, even on a small scale, could change it from a force degrader to a force multiplier. Quote, people have always wanted to be able to do something about the weather. In the U.S., as early as 1839, newspaper archives tell of people with serious and creative ideas on how to make it rain. In 1957, the President's Advisory Committee on Weather Control explicitly recognized the military potential of weather modification, warning in their report, again this is to President Eisenhower, that it could become a more important weapon, quote, than the atomic bomb. However, controversy since 1947 concerning the possible legal consequences arising from the deliberate alteration of large storm systems meant that little future experimentation could be conducted on storms which had the potential to reach land. So let me interpret that for you. So there were watchdog citizens group in 1947 that says, hey, wait a minute, bubbas. Not on our watch. It ain't going to happen. Where are our watchdogs now, folks? They're sleeping at the switch. It really is amazing to me. I am not the brightest bulb in the pack, folks. I admit it. I have a fairly high IQ, but I'm not a genius. If I can figure it out, why the hell can't anybody else? I mean, it just blows me away. So, and I quote, now this is what blows me. Here it is right in chapter 2 in this report, page 3. Quote, in 1977, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution prohibiting the hostile use of environmental modification techniques. The resulting, quote, Convention on the Prohibition of Military or Any Other Hostile Use of Environmental Modification Techniques, called NMOD, committed the signatories to refrain from any military or other hostile use of weather modification which could result in widespread, long-lasting, or severe effects. And the footnote 5 is the Weather Modification Treaty, which I have right here in my hand. Unbelievable. Then why are you doing this report? And worse, why are you making it happen? Because it's clear that it's happening. So they're obviously ignoring the treaty. Because they say in the next sentence, quote, while these two events have not halted the pursuit of weather modification research, they have significantly in the past inhibited its pace and the development of associated technologies, while producing the primary focus on suppressive versus intensification activities. It must be said the influence of the weather on military operations has long been recognized. Prior to the D-Day invasion during World War II, Eisenhower said, quote, in Europe, bad weather is the worst enemy of our air operations. Some soldier once said, the weather is always neutral. Nothing could be more untrue. Bad weather is obviously the enemy of the side that seeks to launch projects requiring good weather. or of the side possessing great assets such as strong air forces, which depend upon good weather for effective operations. If really bad weather should endure permanently, the Nazi would need nothing else to defend the Normandy coast. Wow. And again, Eisenhower, this is during his administration is when this really started to kick off. I'm sure he thought, wow, if I could just use this as a force multiplier, I'm sure he was all for it. But something happened, you see. Something happened in the last years of his administration that caused Eisenhower, in his last publicized television, I mean, this is the fledgling years of television, right? Before Kennedy took over, he he gave the most incredible televised address saying to America, beware the undue power of the military industrialist complex. This is coming from a career military man, a 5-star general that led the invasionary forces in Normandy. What would cause him to say that? Beware the military industrialist complex. I think he realized that it was the possibility of losing control of the civilian oversight. And I think that's exactly what has happened. Okay, I digress. Quote, the impact of weather has also been important in more recent military operations. A significant number of the air sorties into Tuzla during the initial deployment supporting the Bosnian peace operation were aborted due to weather. During Operation Desert Storm, General Buster C. Glosson asked his weather officer to tell him which targets would be clear in 48 hours for inclusion in the Air Tasking Order, the ATO. But current forecasting capability is only 85% accurate for no more than 24 hours, which simply doesn't adequately meet the needs of the ATO planning cycle. Over 50% of the F-117 sorties were weather aborted over their targets, and A-10s only flew 75 out of 200 scheduled close air support missions due to low cloud cover during the first 2 days of the campaign. The application of weather modification technology to clear a hole over the targets long enough for F-117s to attack and place bombs on target or clear fog from runways at Tuzla would have been a very effective force multiplier. Weather modification clearly has potential for military use at the operational level to reduce the elements of fog and friction for friendly operations and to significantly increase them for the enemy. Quote, what do we mean by the term weather modification, question mark. Today, weather modification is the alteration of weather phenomena over a limited area for a limited period of time. That's today. That was today in 1996. They had that potential. However, within the next 3 decades, by target date 2025, the concept of weather modification will expand to include the ability to shape weather patterns by influencing their very determining factors. Whoa, see how the ante has been upped? Achieving such a highly accurate and reasonably precise weather modification capability in the next 30 years will require overcoming some challenging but not insurmountable legal hurdles. In other words, we're going to have to do it on black ops and black budgets through DARPA and other things. And that's exactly what's happened, folks. This has not gone on for oversight to the normal channels of the Pentagon. I'm telling you, it's gone through black ops. Technologically, because in their mindset, they said, well, the end justifies the means. We're going to save American lives. We're going to make it so much easier for national security. We know what's best for this country. The civilian idiots don't. You see, we don't have to have oversight. That's their mindset. I promise you, folks. So it goes on, I quote, technologically, we must have a solid understanding of the variables that affect the weather. We must be able to model the dynamics of the relationships, map the possible results of their interactions, measure their actual real-time values, and thus influence their values to achieve our desired outcome. This is chilling, folks. society will have to provide the resources and legal basis for this mature capability to develop. How could all this happen? The following notional scenario postulates how weather modification will become both technically feasible and socially desirable by the year 2025. In other words, we're going to make this social, we're going to make the people beg for it. We're going to make them demand it. We're going to make such incredible storms that they're going to demand that we do something about weather control. Think about it, folks. This is mind control. This is social manipulation. Make it socially desirable that people are going to want to have it happen. Oh my goodness. Again, problem, reaction, solution, scenario. So, quote, between now, 1996, and the year 2005, technological advances in meteorology and the demand for more precise weather information by global businesses will lead to the successful identification and parameterization of the major variables that affect the weather. Now, we have the, again, Doppler radar. All these things came into effect right about 2000 into 2005. The process for showing Doppler radar projections was so precise by computerized structure was purchased and completely owned and dominated by the Rothschild LLC out of London, England, folks. They own it. Now, you got to remember that the technology to forecast the weather through Doppler and so-called Weather Central is directly tied to the technology needed to manipulate and create the climate change, which all began to happen at the same time. You put the pieces together and it comes completely clear. The scales should fall from your eyes right away. Now, this is laid out. It's exactly when Doppler radar came online, and right around 2000, and became available to weather stations across through NOAA, and of course through publicly owned and privately owned TV stations to tell you the weather. Well, it's very accurate. We're actually on, weather is unbelievably accurate now, right? By 2015, advances in computational capability, modeling techniques, and atmospheric information tracking will produce a highly accurate and reliable weather prediction capability validated against real-world weather. Now, this is important. Real-world weather versus what's the opposite of real-world weather? False or manipulated weather? You see, the language here is like, oh my God, see what they're doing. In the following decade, from 2015 to 2025, population densities. This blows me away. It makes me want to just scream obscenities, folks. Population densities will be targeted to put pressure on the worldwide availability and cost of food and usable water. Massive life and property losses associated with what they perceive to be natural weather disasters will become increasingly unacceptable. Why? Because they're increasingly super powerful. See, the social outcry. Oh, we have technology. We can surely do something. We got to stop. And it's already happening, folks. You see people talking on the news, talking heads and the think tanks. They're manipulating public opinion and says, is there any way we can stop this catastrophic flooding, this once in a millennium, once in a 1,000-year storm? They're calling for technology to save them from the storm that the technology created in the first place. Oh my goodness. It's all here in black and white, folks. These social pressures will prompt governments and or other organizations who are able to capitalize on the technological advances of the previous 20 years to finalize a highly accurate and reasonably precise weather modification technology capability. See, that's what's being fed to the public, but it's already in place, folks. I'm telling you, they wouldn't be launching these top secret space shuttles if they hadn't have the capabilities in place to do it. And the patents are issued, folks. Quote, the increasing urgency to realize the benefits of this capability will stimulate the withdrawal of laws and treaties that are already existing. In other words, let's repeal that stupid 1977 treaty, right? And some unilateral actions making the risks, get this, quote, making the risks required to validate and refine it totally acceptable. Wow. In other words, we're going to have to experiment on population centers. We're going to see what we can really do. Let's see how powerful we can make this. Let's see what can we direct a hurricane directly to take out President Trump's palatial palace in South Florida? Can we do that and make him just really say, as commander-in-chief, I want this stopped because it's affected me personally? Yeah. Folks, it's all part of their plan, and I'm telling you, it's what's happening.
Dr. True, don't forget that Jose, which was just upgraded less than 12 hours ago to a Category 5, is right behind it.
There you go. You're on Jose. We got Hose B and we got Jose. I mean, we're all being hosed, folks. We're being hosed, and thanks for that. Yeah, you're right. And who knows what else is on the right? I tell you, when the dust settles in October, November, because Harvey, the cleanup is supposed to basically be lucky to have it cleaned up, at least manageable by Thanksgiving, by Turkey Day. I mean, that's how bad it is. There's going to be people screaming for it. And little announcement. Guess what, folks? We have technology that we may be able to stop this. Do you think that America's public opinion would be, by all means, let's do it? Okay. I mean, people aren't thinking anymore. It really isn't. Let's continue on, because this will make your jaw drop. That's what I said at the beginning of the show. Okay, so the social pressures will prompt the governments and other organizations to basically to come out publicly with weather modification and make it normal and really benevolent and wonderful. Quote, by 2025, the entire world, or at least integral parts of it, will be able to shape their local weather patterns by influencing the factors that affect climate, precipitation, storms and their effects, including fog, as well as near space. Not outer space, but near space. These, quote, highly accurate and reasonably precise civil applications of weather modification technology have obvious military implications. Okay, so this is what's amazing. Quote, the term weather modification, therefore, may have negative connotations for many people, civilians and military members alike. It is thus important to define the scope to be considered in this paper so that potential critics or proponents of further research have a common basis for discussion. Get this, folks. You gotta wrap your handle around this. In the broadest sense, quote, weather modification can be divided into simply two major categories: suppression or intensification of weather patterns. In extreme cases, it might involve the creation of completely new weather patterns, attenuation or control and guidance of severe storms, and get this, and I quote, or even alteration of global climate on a very far-reaching and or long-lasting scale. Quote, in the mildest and least controversial cases, it may consist of simply inducing and or suppressing precipitation, clouds, or fog banks for short times over small-scale regions. Other low-intensity applications would include the alteration and or use of near space as a medium to enhance communications, disrupt active and passive sensing, or other purposes. In conducting the research for this study, the broadest possible interpretation of weather modification is initially embraced, so that the widest range of opportunities available for our military in 2025 will be thoughtfully and thoroughly considered. Okay. Quote, extreme and controversial examples of weather modification is the creation of made-to-order weather, large-scale climate modifications, creation and or control, parentheses, or steering of severe destructive storms, etc. They were all researched as part of the study, but receive only brief mention here because, in the author's judgment, the technical obstacles prevented their application within the next 30 years. Of course, they're going to say that. They're saying this. The technology is too instrumental. No, it isn't, because the technology that's been transferred, it's just as technically advanced to do a small scale operation as a big scale operation. Who wouldn't want to? They're saying in one sentence above that it has to have the biggest bang for the buck to have the most powerful war fighting capabilities. And then in this next breath, they're saying, we're not really going to do it because it's not technically valid. Then why even have the damn study? Okay? And this is like a caveat, a legalese of this. This is, if this were not the case, these applications would have been included in this report as potential military options, despite their controversial and potentially malevolent nature and their clear inconsistency with standing UN agreements to which the U.S. is a signatory. It's a legalese saying, we're just not going to break any laws. We're not going to do this overtly, but I guarantee damn well with DARPA and their black operations budget, it's being done. Okay, if it's not being done, then level with us as to what that space shuttle is all about. Come on, people. On the other hand, again, talk about legalese. On the other hand, quote, the weather modification applications identified in this report range from technically proven to highly feasible. So there you have it. Everything they're talking about here has been technically proven. And of course, there wouldn't be patents issued to the microwave expert, Mr. Bernie Eastland, without it. Now, they don't have the technology, right? But they have the system descriptions. And these systems descriptions have been clearly utilized. I tell you, this is what gets me. My goodness, they're just trying to CYA now. But you be the judge. Quote, our vision is that by 2025, the military could influence the weather on a meso scale, very large scale, covering an area over 200 kilometers in width. Wow. They do it on a big scale of over 200 kilometers, or on a micro scale, just an immediate local area to achieve operational capabilities such as those listed in Table 1. The capability would be the synergistic result of a system consisting of one, highly trained weather force specialists, WFS, who are members of the Commander-in-Chief's Weather Force Support Elements, WFAC. Number 2, access ports to the Global Weather Network, called GWN, where worldwide weather observations and forecasts are obtained near real time from both civilian and military sources. Number 3, a dense, highly accurate local area weather sensing and communication network system. 4, an advanced computer local area weather modification modeling and prediction capability within the area of responsibility, the AOR. 5, proven weather modification intervention technologies. And 6, a feedback capability. They've done this, folks. I'm telling you, it's the patents have been issued. They've been assigned to venture capitalists that are, again, there's two sources that I've traced this back to. Global venture capitalists with Goldman Sachs, but more primarily, they all stem back from Evelyn Rothschild, chairman CEO of Rothschild LLC. It's just what it is, folks. The Global Weather Network here is outlined in Figure 3-1. As I said in the first hour, this is what's crazy to me, but not surprising. This is it's not showing a global map. No, a map of a globe and how how it's all laid out as a map. See, this is a smoking gun, folks. It's just like what Edward Henry said in his book. The FAA flight training systems to train air traffic controllers to have them go into and the simulation models. Their manual says this is not based on a globe because it'll cause the airplanes to crash. It's not precise. It's got to be within meters of precision. So they have what's called an azimuthal equidistance map, which looks exactly like the United Nations logo. It's laid out with the top of it, the center of it being the North Pole, and the North Star is right in the center of that. Boom. And everything is tied in with longitude, latitude lines from that point on the top. It's what's called an azimuthal equidistance map. So here we have this equidistance azimuthal map showing how the deployed automated systems will interact and connect through sensor computers in all parts of the globe. There's one in Australia. There's one in South America. There's one in looks like it's in the just above the Middle East, right about above Pakistan. There's a sensor system in the United Kingdom. There's one in the Western United States. It's all integrated in what they call the GWEN system, Global Weather Network. Holy mackerel! And think about it, folks. If Edward Henry in his book that he documents is right concerning the training of the FAA flights, doesn't it make sense that they would have to do the same thing to monitor the global weather? It's not really global. It's international weather. There's a flat Earth map showing this. It blows me away. This is an official document for the Air Force. These guys know. They know the reality. They're not telling the people the truth. Incredible to me. It really is. Quote, evidence of the evolving future weather modeling and prediction capability as well as the GWN, Global Weather Network, can be seen in the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's NOAA 1995 to 2005 Strategic Plan. Oh, and by the way, it referenced the U.S. Geological Survey map, which is the source of the equidistance azimuthal map. It's produced by the U.S. Geological Survey, the USGS. This is their official map, folks. Excuse me, it's not a globe at all. It's on the map as USGS. It just makes my blood boil. How we've been deceived. Okay. It involves program elements to, quote, advance short-term warning and forecast services, implement seasonal to interannual climate forecasts, and predict and assess decadal to centennial changes. In other words, they're able to graph this thing out for a decade of patterns, as well as a centennial, 100-year global change format. I mean, what part of playing God is going on here? NOAA's plan, NOAA's National Atmospheric Administration, Oceanic and Administration's plans include extensive data gathering programs such as Next Generation Radar, NEXRAD, and Doppler weather surveillance systems deployed throughout the U.S. and internationally. Data from these sensing systems feed into over 100 forecast centers on a computer network for processing through the fiber optics network by the Advanced Weather Interactive Processing System, AWIPS. which will provide real-time, up to the second, data communication, processing, and display capabilities for extensive forecasting. Folks, do you think the Doppler system is conspiracy theory? Do you think NextRad is conspiracy theory? Do you think Advanced Weather Interactive Processing System is conspiracy theory? Do you think the fiber optics under the nation's ocean connecting the world in an azimuthal equidistance map is science fiction? NOAA has leased, quote, this is 1996, ladies and gentlemen. NOAA has leased a Cray C90 supercomputer capable of performing over 1.5 times 10 to the 10th power operations per second. That has already been accurately used to run our hurricane prediction system, the HPS. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is 1996 now. There's tech geeks out there. I mean, Dominic, you're a tech geek. I know that. You know what that 1.5 times 10 to the 10th operations per second. I mean, that must be pretty damn fast. Okay. So the question that asks is on page 10. We're only on page 10, folks. How will the military in general and the U.S. Air Force in particular manage and employ a weather modification capability? We envision this will all be done by the Weather Force Support Element, they call it WFSE, whose primary mission will be to support the war-fighting commander-in-chiefs with weather modification options in addition to current, completely accurate forecasting support. Although the WFSE could operate anywhere as long as it has access to the Global Weather Network, GWN, and the system components already discussed, it will more than likely be a component within the AOC or its 2025 equivalent. Could be somewhere down in Mississippi, and there's places that are highly suspect as to what's going on. So with the CINC's intent as guidance, the WFSE formulates weather modification options using information provided by the GWN and weather modification forecast models. All of this processed by a 1996 Cray C90 supercomputer. I tell you, that's old technology. I don't know what it could possibly be now, but I suppose it's a whole lot more than that. Okay? All right. Sensors real-time detect changes both in the ocean levels through the sensors, the ocean temperature levels, creating these these low pressure troughs, okay, these tropical depressions, so-called. They detect the change and, quote, feed data on the new weather pattern to the modeling system, which updates its forecast accordingly. Then the WFSE, remember what that is? Weather Force Support Element. Checks the effectiveness of its efforts. What does that mean? What efforts? You see, the efforts to either suppress or intensify. By how? Pulling down the updated current conditions and new forecasts from the GWN and local weather data networks and plans follow-on missions as needed. This concept is illustrated on figure 3-2. You have it right there, folks. Oh my goodness. The Air Ops Center, which includes deployed microwave technology in the near upper atmosphere, the near space. Okay, this is again deployed by space shuttle. Again, it's the first space shuttle secret mission, SBX, happened in 2010, right on schedule. I mean, this is laid out here graphically. Okay, it shows the computer, the Cray computer, then basically doing it all real time on computer network, and then causing the microwave to deploy, causing the guidance to happen, to either intensify or steer it away from landmass. They could. What I'm telling you, folks, is there's no way that a Hurricane Irma could become the most powerful Atlantic hurricane on record given this technology, because they would simply be tracking it as it begins to form itself as a tropical depression. They could basically, okay, oh, we need a little bit of rain, have some nice storm showers come through. They can make that happen, folks. They can make that happen, and they can guide it, or they can cause it to go harmlessly out in the ocean, as the case may be. So WFSC personnel will need to be experts in information systems and well schooled in the arts of both offensive and defensive information warfare. They must also have an in-depth understanding of the global weather network and an appreciation for how the weather modification will be employed to meet a commander-in-chief's needs. Quote, because of the nodal, now I don't know what a nodal web nature of this system is. I don't know what a nodal web is. This concept is very flexible. For instance, WFAC could be assigned to each theater of operations to provide direct support to the commander-in-chief. The system would also be survivable with multiple nodes connecting to the global weather network. As a part of the information age, this system would be most vulnerable to information warfare. Each WFSC would thus need the most current defensive and offensive information capabilities available. Defensive abilities will be necessary for its survival. Offensive abilities could provide spoofing options to create virtual weather in the enemy's sensory and information systems. We're going to hack into our enemy's weather and put some virtual weather to make them think it's... Oh, my goodness. You got to give them an A+ for creativity on this one. I mean, my goodness. Quota would also allow for the capability to mask or disguise our own weather modification activities. There's PSYOPs, and it's all of its glory right there. I'll just skip over. This is the last paragraph. Quote, developing a true weather modification capability will require various intervention tools to adjust the appropriate meteorological parameters in very predictable ways. It is this area that must be developed by the military based on specific capabilities required, those listed in Table 1 in the executive summary. Such a system would necessarily contain a sensor array and localized battle area data net to provide the final level resolution required to detect intervention effects and provide accurate feedback. Unreal. The total weather modification process would be a real-time loop of continuous, appropriate, and measured interventions and feedback capable of producing desired weather modification. So it goes on in Chapter 4 to talk about how to create a decrease or increase precipitation, as the case may be. But the key thing on Chapter 4, as I've read through this earlier, was just to show how they could utilize carbon dust studies for small-scale precipitation enhancement. They also talk in here about putting out clouds of hydrogen and oxygen into the atmosphere on ground level. Now, on the blog, Edward Henrys this morning sent me this video showing what happened at the Mississippi NASA Center. This isn't. I got to dig into this more, but here on August 30th, okay, you have Harvey kind of winding down, and then you have this big release for 500 seconds of this massive cloud of hydrogen and oxygen that forms this incredible cloud, and suddenly all of the weather stations say, "Oh my goodness, Harvey is resurrecting. It's coming to life again and dumping more rain." That happened in real time. Watch that video, folks. You see the cloud. And incredible, here's a BBC, British Broadcasting Company crew comes in. Where's America's reporters on this? They're absent. They're AWOL. BBC comes in and they see the cloud, just a small 15, 20-second burst of hydrogen and oxygen combustible gas. And they say somewhere in Mississippi, this is going to be raining. And within minutes, it's pouring buckets on the reporter. He can't believe it. Before they started the explosion of the gas, there was just partly cloudy skies. It was clear. Folks, 500 minutes. It's never run that far. And what do they do? How do they generate this? They suck out the water from this bayou. That's the 125,000 acres that they basically put into this research station, right? And so they bring this swamp water, this bayou water, and produce it in this clouds of hydrogen and oxygen, and create rain. It's well documented in that video. Who knows how many trillions more gallons of rain fell in the 2 days following that seeding there in Mississippi. Folks, it's part of this plan. It says they will utilize hydrogen and oxygen technologies as well as carbon dust absorption for precipitation enhancement. Unbelievable. I mean, it's right here in black and white. We're seeing it real time. This gentleman that did the video was right on. He said, this something is wrong here, folks. I say it's time to call a spade, that we have been attacked, folks. This is warfare as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's no longer time to sit idly by and say, well, this is just an act of God. I can't be 100% sure this is really happening. Yes, you can. The information, the technology is there. They have the ability to either suppress it or increase it. All the pieces fit. The dots connect, and the picture you see is one that we have been under attack. We're almost out of time. Major, help me close this thing out. What's your thoughts?
Just jaw-dropping. I mean, I'm just stunned with not only reading your article, which, by the way, we're going to republish on the Goldwater.com. And as I promised you, anything that we post, we don't touch. Totally uncensored. We're not touching a word of it. And that was my promise to you. We're going to go ahead and republish that right after I get off the show. And we've got another article about your article, in fact, already written. So, wonderful show. I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to need to just go back into whether or not again, and really take a look into this.
Please do, and disseminate this. This is, like I said, at the top of the show. I think this is one of the most important topics that we could ever discuss rationally. You know, I wish I could. Maybe I can scan in this report for you to look at, because it's absolutely woke me up when I read this, and now I can't get it anymore. So it's out there, but I'm not making this up, folks. Hey, and get a copy of this show if you would. Let's post it wide too. This 2 hours is pretty much information packed. I'm reading verbatim from these published reports. Guys, thanks for being on the air with me. Major, thanks, Dom. Thanks, Mr. Rowe. God bless you. And we'll be back next week with more updates. Be well. Be safe.